In Russia, a guy is seconds from decapitation when an elevator shoots up with him stuck halfway inside. Another man is trapped in an elevator rocketing up 31 floors in 15 seconds. A man walks up to a stranger's house pretending to knock, clearly being watched by someone waiting in a car. And a mother carrying her toddler gets followed up her front steps by a stalker. All this and more. A couple years ago, early in the morning in Daytona Beach, Florida, Gina Helsel stepped outside to let her dog out, something she does all the time to scare off stray cats that hang around her porch. But this time, it wasn't a cat waiting out there, it was a bear. Watch this. Wow, that's a new fear unlocked. God, that is terrifying, eh? The camera makes the bear look all demonic too, with the light reflecting off its eyes. Eesh. According to Gina, the bear was getting in the neighbor's trash, and I caught it in the act, she said. It's always interesting watching videos like this and seeing how people act in horror movies is sometimes more accurate than we think. In her panic, she struggles to get back in the house and close the door. I did fumble with it. It was open too. It wasn't shut all the way because I never shut it all the way when I take him out, Gina said. Thankfully, the bear didn't follow them. According to Mike Orlando from Florida Fish and Wildlife, the bear is mostly focused on the dog. It basically lunges, does a bit of a bluff charge, then when she and the dog retreat, the bear runs away. She wasn't prepared to have a bear sitting there, and the bear probably wasn't prepared to have her show up with a dog, he said. Gina said she's always watching for gators, snakes, and coyotes, but she never thought she'd see a bear outside her door. This next video raises a whole laundry list of questions. It was posted by Shannon Wood on YouTube, who wrote in the description, apparently this guy was put up to knocking on our door. It's clear from our other security cameras that he was never touching the door as he was fake knocking while watching the car in the driveway. Watch as he puts on a show. And yeah, this is a really odd situation here. So this dude walks up onto the porch, fakes knocking on the door, and notice how he continually looks off to the side. Someone's in a car parked in the driveway, seemingly putting him up to this. Take a look. He also keeps fidgeting with his hands. He looks noticeably uncomfortable with what he's doing, and he then asks, does Matt live here? But notice how exaggerated his hand gestures are and how quietly he says this. It's pretty obvious he's trying to make it look like he's talking to the homeowner when he really isn't. And then he apologizes and leaves, having never actually spoken to anyone.
Okay. Sorry about that. Sorry.
And as he walks down the front yard, he's calling out to the drivers saying, nobody named Matt lives here, and they still have no idea what was going on here. Was this a dare? Was there something more sinister going on? If that's the case, this dude's ruse ended up working, and he protected the homeowners from whatever that person or persons in the car were gonna do. Speaking of close calls, check this out. This woman is carrying her toddler up the steps to her home. She's also on the phone. She's distracted, to say the least, not aware that there's some random guy behind her who's been following her for who knows how long. He doesn't stop when she closes the gate. He brazenly opens it and starts walking up the stairs behind her. She finally notices what's going on, but seems to have a bit of trouble finding her keys. There's that horror movie thing coming true again. Luckily though, her neighbor was outside and there's no audio, but he seems to tell the guy to go away. Thankfully he does. Scary to think what would have happened had he not been outside at the time. It's also scary that this happened just in broad daylight. You're never safe. Always make sure you're being as alert as possible when out in public, especially if your child is with you and you're on a phone call. Any sign you're unaware and distracted, nutcases will take advantage of that. Make sure you don't have your volume up too high for this next one. This clip was posted by Reddit user Nigo Caps, who said, this is home security camera footage from my friend's relatives in the Philippines. Can I get a possible explanation for this? His grandma had recently died. She lived in that house. So let's take a look at this. 10. So yeah, I told you, that comes out of nowhere. I bet you were expecting to see an orb or like a ghostly shape moving across the screen, not for the washing machine to suddenly, like, I don't know, spaz out. What would you call that? Pretty bizarre. What do you think happened here? Was it just on the fritz? Or is there something paranormal going on in this house? This first video comes out of Russia. Honestly though, it looks like something out of Final Destination. The security camera shows the lift stop. One guy steps out and another guy tries to get in, but the doors barely give him a second. before the elevator suddenly shoots upward, with him halfway inside. And, it's this terrifying split second where he's got to either, go all the way in or pull out before his body gets crushed. Luckily, he wriggled back and ducked his head out just in time. If he hadn't, he would have been killed. One person on Twitter wrote, "This reminds me of the Final Destination scene when that lady got decapitated by the elevator." Now, most elevators have safety systems that, stop this exact thing from happening. Clearly, this one didn't, or it was just malfunctioning. Speaking of elevators malfunctioning, this guy climbed into an elevator and experienced an absolute nightmare that nearly cost him his life. So he enters the elevator, presses the button for his floor, but then something goes wrong. Very wrong. The elevator starts to ascend before the doors have even finished closing. Then the doors just open back up, but the elevator is still climbing up and fast. It's basically falling upward. I've said this on the channel before, but I've had recurring nightmares of being in an elevator and it's suddenly dropping. Never thought I needed to worry about one shooting up instead. New fear unlocked, I guess. This elevator rose more than 31 floors in just 15 seconds. And on the 31st floor, it crashed into the building's roof. That's what caused the camera to cut out. Now, luckily the dude lived, but he was seriously injured. Alright, this one's more of a Looney Tunes situation, but it still would have been scary as hell. So our main character for this story walks into the elevator dragging a vacuum cleaner. He's in the middle of wrapping the power cable around the vacuum when the doors begin to close. Problem is, part of the cord is still out in the hallway, so now the cord is caught in the doors, but the elevator starts to descend. Now, for some reason, this guy is standing there with the cord between his legs. My first course of action before pressing any of the buttons, before trying to pull the cord out of the closed doors like this guy does, I'd be stepping as far away as possible from that vacuum. And I'd make damn sure the cord wasn't between my legs for what is inevitably about to happen. This guy doesn't do that. So the vacuum gets pulled up as the cord unravels, taking the dude with it. Luckily, it snaps and he falls back to the floor, but I mean, ouch. Favorite comment on this video comes from Reddit user expert_matter, who said, "Perfect demonstration of how to floss your balls," which, amazing. This next clip feels like something that would only happen in a Taco Bell-induced nightmare, but here it is, captured right on camera. Woman gets into the elevator, she's going to the first floor, elevator starts going down, reaches the first floor, goes right past the first floor, and just keeps going and going and going. She tries hitting the buttons to no avail, it just continues plunging deeper and deeper until finally coming to a stop. Through the windows, you see nothing but black. And then the doors finally open, revealing nothing but a dark void beyond. Not knowing what else to do, because the elevator clearly isn't working, she cautiously steps out into the darkness. But the doors close shut behind her and back up the elevator goes. Super eerie stuff. Now, I have no info on this clip, don't know who uploaded it or from where. Now, I'm gonna safely assume it's probably a hoax, but I don't care, I find it eerie as hell anyway. This footage comes from a manga cafe in Japan, where a security camera was aimed at the reception desk and the nearby elevator. First, it looks nothing more than a guy stepping out of the lift, but if you look behind him, there's something else in that elevator. Looks like a woman in a long red dress, but something is off about her. She's way too tall for the space, tall enough that she'd need to duck just to fit through those doors. The longer you stare, the stranger it gets. She isn't moving at all, almost like she's suspended in the air instead of standing on the floor. Some people who've studied this clip say it doesn't look like a person standing upright. It looks more like a figure floating inside the elevator. Now, as for what this entity could be, well, according to some locals who watched this clip at the time, the woman's appearance matched someone who'd recently taken her own life in a nearby park. So far, we've had a bear, we've had a mysterious shirtless man, a stalker, and a possessed washing machine. I think it's time for a small, unidentified, alien-like creature, don't you? What exactly do you think this thing is? This video comes from JessDaily406 on TikTok, who said it was captured on her Ring cam at 3 a.m. Something darts across the yard and runs down the street beyond the hedges. Whatever it is, it's short. You'd think it'd be an animal, but what makes this so bizarre is it doesn't look to move on all fours. It looks like it's running on two legs. One commenter said it's kind of shaped like those little alien dudes from Men in Black. totally agree there. It's got that short but spindly kind of look. But I don't know, what do you all think of this one? Share your thoughts down below. This next piece of security footage comes from Reddit user OKThanks3022, who said the footage comes from his friend's workplace and that whatever this thing was, it activated the motion sensors on the camera. Take a look at this. Someone in the comments said it was probably a shadow from someone walking outside, but it doesn't really look like that to me. It's not just black like shadows are, and it has a more solid shape to it. At first, it actually just looks like someone walking through the empty restaurant. I thought it may have been an intruder, but then they just walk into the wall and vanish. Any explanations for this one? Let us know in the comments. Posted to Reddit by SS Shooter is this creepy piece of home security footage. SS Shooter wrote, "My buddy caught this footage on his Blink camera. A figure appears from behind the right tree. When the motion lights activate, the figure seems to disappear. It looks small, like a child, but moves kinda weird. Any thoughts?" I do have thoughts. I think this is legitimately strange. I know home security cameras can be kinda janky sometimes. What looks like a semi-translucent, ghostly entity usually isn't. But this one is kinda different. Someone or something was there, but then it completely disappears when the light hits it. I don't really have any solid explanation for this one. What do you all think though? Glowing orb footage is a dime a dozen, especially these days, but have you ever seen a mysterious orb transform into a person? Well, you're about to. So this happened early in the morning on August 22nd, 2024, around 4:26 a.m. A security camera in Mexico caught this glowing ball of light floating across a field, but you can see it slowly changes shape, forming into a person, seemingly. Actually, it looks more like two people standing close together. Now, for the sake of transparency here, I don't think there's anything paranormal going on here. I'm chalking this up to two people walking across a field and that not so great camera only picking up the flashlight on their phone until they stand still and they kind of morph into view. Still, it does make for a pretty strange piece of footage. This next video is very real and pretty unsettling. How would you like to step outside and see this guy lurking around in your yard? In the middle of the night, some dude was creeping around people's houses armed to the teeth. He had a hammer hanging off his belt, an axe, and yes, that long, sharp object he's holding under his arm is a sword. You don't see that every day, thankfully. Luckily, nobody gets hurt here. He doesn't even try to break in. He just steals a few things from outside and then leaves. Clearly, he was ready for things to get violent though. I mean, I don't think anyone shows up at someone's door brandishing a sword and a hammer unless they're ready to use it. In 2023, a now deleted Reddit user posted this eerie video. His home security camera caught what he says is a shadow figure gliding down his stairs in the middle of the night. Something that left him and his family pretty shaken. Here we see this dark shape drift down the steps before slipping behind a wall and vanishing. The man explained that his motion sensor usually picks up harmless little white orbs, which he assumed were just dust or bugs, but this time he said, last night was different. It caught this figure, shadow, or whatever you want to call it, moving down my stairs. What makes it worse is that his family had already been kind of uneasy for a bit. He wrote, "My family and I have had a sense of being watched before, but this blew my mind. I am terrified. Please help." The post quickly filled up with people offering theories, some saying it might be a camera glitch or a light distortion. Others said it just looked way too smooth and deliberate to be a technical issue. This next clip reminded a lot of people of the Elisa Lam case, which is not going to be on this list. It's been talked about to death, so here's a good substitute. Eliza 1818 was recording herself in this hotel hallway. She said she was being followed and was pretending to be on FaceTime to try and deter the person, but when she heard footsteps rushing toward her, that's when she just booked it down the hallway, calling out for help before finally reaching the elevator. And that's when we get some security footage. So she runs into the elevator and tries closing the doors. They don't budge. So she just huddles in the corner covering her face. Finally, out of options, she exits the elevator, at which point the doors finally decide to close. Now, it becomes pretty obvious that there's no one following her, at least not that we can see. Who knows if there was something actually going on. Looking at this security footage though, it does kind of seem like there's no immediate danger, that she's just imagining something. Eerily though, there's a brief moment in the hallway part of the security footage when a mysterious shadow passes over the wall. Take a look at this. What do you guys think of this one? Was someone or something following her, or was she just faking this whole thing? Share your thoughts down below. This one will make you wince. So here we see a couple dudes carrying a big sheet of glass into an elevator. It does not fit. But before they have time to exit the elevator and reevaluate things, the doors close, trapping the sheet of glass as it descends. Now at this point, I'd be covering my face, I'd be like turning away, not even knowing for sure what's gonna happen, but I feel like being around glass in such an unexpected, precarious situation like this, it's just kind of an instinct. But this guy, he just stands there, staring up at this sheet of glass, and then this happens. And he's lucky none of that shot into his eye. I mean, who knows, it might have. That glass was just obliterated. All right, this next one is pretty horrific. Back in June of 2017, CCTV cameras in Shanghai caught a woman standing at the entrance of an elevator, looking at her phone. Suddenly, she trips. One of her legs slips right between the closing doors, and before she could pull free, the elevator started moving. Instead of stopping, it just dragged her upward. 3 full floors, with her leg trapped the entire way. By the time it finally stopped, her leg was badly broken. Luckily, it was just her leg that got trapped, but still, good God. I can't even imagine how utterly painful and scary this must have been. Holy crap, watch this. I have no words. That is up there on my list of worst nightmares. Luckily, this comes from a Brazilian prank show though. The floor isn't actually falling out under her feet, but still, you can't do this to people. What if someone had a heart attack? I probably would. I'm just standing in an elevator when all of a sudden the floor tiles fall out from under my feet. I'm just staring into this abyss below. I don't know if this counts as a prank, because it's just an attempt to break these people's minds. This last guy took a ride on what has to be the jankiest elevator I've ever seen. Apparently, he was riding the elevator in a newly constructed building. Yeah, very newly constructed, and that it looks nowhere near being finished. Well, in the middle of this terrifying ride, it sounds like this thing is just inches away from breaking down. A piece of building material just falls right into the elevator. Dust is flying, sounds of crunching and scraping fill the air. I'd be thinking I was about to die at any moment. And so did this guy, because he filmed his hands after finally getting off this death trap, and he was shaking like a leaf. Can't blame him. Back in November of 2014, the sky lit up over the city of Resh. It was crazy bright. The extra weird part was no sound, just this huge flash. Some folks thought it might have been a meteor, but the Siberian Times reported that a, quote, local observatory indicated nothing fell from the sky on the day of the flash. Police also waited, saying it could have been a ground explosion, but the most likely explanation turned out to be military related. Journalists suggested the military was probably burning expired gunpowder. Since no sounds were heard and the authorities didn't try to cover anything up, it was unlikely to be a meteor or a nuke. Back in 2017, people in northern Siberia saw something that freaked a lot of them out: a glowing orb floating in the sky. Photographers were out trying to capture the aurora borealis when the strange light appeared. Sergei Anasimov told the press, "At first, I was taken aback for a few minutes, not understanding what was happening. The glowing ball rose from behind the trees and moved in my direction." Anisimov thought it might have been some kind of searchlight, but other folks threw out aliens, a portal to another dimension, out as possibilities. Some people looked up and thought the world was just ending. Well, there actually is a solid explanation for this one. The orb was actually caused by Russian missile tests. They fired a Topol intercontinental ballistic missile, plus 3 others from submarines. Astrophysicist Jonathan McDowell told the news 4 ballistic missiles were launched, and at least one of them was widely observed. There's no doubt about the identification of these observations with the missile tests, end quote. But even with that explanation though, what an incredible sight. That thing just looks nuts. Back in 2013, a 12-year-old Russian schoolboy claimed he captured a Yeti-like creature on camera. The footage has become pretty well known in Bigfoot circles. Yevgeny Anisimov was walking in the woods with 2 friends when he spotted a huge blurry figure in the trees. When it turned toward them, they bolted. Igor Burtsev, director of the International Center of Hominology in Moscow, called the footage, quote, real and not falsified, and said it stood in a typical pose with its back slightly bent and its long arms down. He also noted the tracks in the snow were very interesting, not only long, but large. It looks like it first walked toward the village and then walked back in its own footprints, end quote. The sighting happened about 18 miles from a coal mining city in Siberia. Burtsev said the boys had been following a chain of huge tracks when they suddenly saw the creature about 50 meters away. Burtsev claimed experts had checked the video and that it was the first time in modern Russian history someone filmed a Yeti so clearly. But DNA tests of the hair samples from the area later found they came from a horse, a raccoon, and an American black bear, not a Yeti. Still, Burtsev insisted there was a, quote, gigantic body of evidence suggesting Yetis exist in Siberia. What do you all think of this one, though? Share those comments down below. The Dyatlov Pass incident gets talked about a lot, and for good reason. It's one of the creepiest unsolved mysteries ever documented, but there's a theory that it wasn't an avalanche or even some government conspiracy behind the deaths of the hikers, but Yeti. And this idea stems from this photo, one of the last taken by the group. Could it just be one of the hikers? Of course, but considering the brutal, violent way these people died and the kind of darkness of this figure, something creepy about it, I mean, I don't know, it does make you wonder if something was stalking them. For context, back in 1959, 9 hikers died in the Ural Mountains under incredibly strange circumstances. Their tent had been ripped open from the inside. Some were found almost naked in freezing temperatures. The bodies showed signs of a lot of trauma. One hiker was even missing a tongue. It looked like the campsite had been completely ransacked. The avalanche theory, that doesn't really explain all this. The way the bodies were found, the injuries, it almost feels like something deliberately attacked them. And it's not like there haven't been reports of hairy, Bigfoot-like creatures in that area. Also up in Siberia, there's a massive hole in the ground called the Batagaika crater. It's the largest permafrost crater in the world, a hole in the frozen ground over 100 meters deep, or about 328 feet. And it's still getting bigger. The crater started forming after the surrounding forest was cleared in the 60s, which caused the permafrost to thaw. Flooding and landslides have made it expand even faster. Mary Edwards from the University of Southampton described how the crater keeps growing, saying, "As more of the material at the bottom of the slope melts and comes loose, a large face is exposed to the air, which in turn increases the speed of permafrost thawing. Basically, the walls collapse, more ground is exposed, and then it all melts faster, starting the cycle over again every year. But as scary as a giant hole in the ground opening up is, it's also revealing a lot. Scientists have found Ice Age fossils around the rim, remnants of ancient animal remains like woolly mammoths. It also tells us a lot about the hundreds of thousands of years of climate history here.
A researcher camping near Area 51 just captured thermal footage of a Dorito-shaped craft that makes the B-2 stealth bomber look like a relic. On January 14, 2026, researcher Anders Ottesen captured a thermographic video of a sharply triangular aircraft operating in the restricted airspace around Groom Lake. Using an AGM TM50-640 camera, he was able to compare the object's thermal signature directly against a B-2 Spirit flying the same night. The Dorito craft showed no visible engines, a completely different heat profile, and moved with a precision that seasoned observers say matches no known airframe. Motion-triggered cameras meant to film wildcats in the driest desert on Earth instead captured glowing orbs that physically split in two and changed directions mid-air. In late 2025, veterinarian Pamela Bendeck and the University of Chile released footage from camera traps in the remote Atacama Desert. The silent, raw footage shows intense bursts of light, not flashes, but moving orbs, that dart across the frame and stop instantly and split into two distinct lights moving in opposite directions.
Flares, maybe? No, they're...
Since the cameras are heat triggered and the area is hundreds of miles from any flight path or town, researchers have officially ruled out drones, insects, and satellites. A perfect metallic orb was filmed hovering over Buga, Colombia, and the physical object recovered afterwards supposedly reacts to sound frequencies like an organic lung. In June 2025, viral high-definition footage emerged of a silver sphere floating motionless over the city of Buga. Unlike a weather balloon, the object showed no swaying and moved against high-altitude winds. Since the sighting, researchers in the region have analyzed similar spheres found on the ground, claiming that they are seamless, have no visible power source, and vibrate vibrate in response to specific audio frequencies. A father and son in Western Australia filmed the formation of lights so bright they illuminated the desert floor, but the local observatory says that they weren't stars or ships. On September 10, 2025, Shane and Bradley Plain captured video of 3 massive lights hovering in a vertical line over Geraldton, Australia. The lights then shifted into a sideways horseshoe formation before darting north.
Dad,
I don't know what that is.
look at the formation they're flying in.
While the port authorities suggested light refraction, the Perth Observatory noted that these sightings were reported by witnesses far inland where ocean-based refraction is physically impossible.
It's a weird formation, I know. And there's another one over there, you see it?
A simple family home in Yorkshire became the site of the most violent poltergeist in history, and the new 2025 photographic analysis of the Black Monk figure has scientists questioning the nature of shadows. The case of 30 East Drive in Pontefract is legendary. In the late 1960s, the Pritchard family was terrorized by an entity that they called Fred, which was caught on camera as a tall, hooded figure. While the original photos were grainy, 2025 forensic digital enhancement by the British Paranormal Society revealed that the shadow cast by the figure does not align with any light source in the room. Unlike a human intruder, the figure appears to absorb light rather than reflect it, with objects regularly being thrown on camera spotted by visitors even today. The visual evidence of the Black Monk remains one of the most chilling documented hauntings in the UK.
These images may not look like much at first glance, but let's dig into the backstory here. So in November of 2005, a hiker named Randy Chase was near the top of Silver Star Mountain in the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest, and something unusual caught his eye across a snowy ridge. He lifted his camera and took a few pictures of what looked like this dark, upright figure moving down the hill. After that first shot, the subject stood up, or shifted. Chase snapped 2 more photos as it walked away into the snow-covered terrain. A week after these pictures were taken, Chase was interviewed by John Callender from the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, or BFRO. Callender described Chase as honest and familiar with the outdoors and said the photos didn't look staged or hoax. Chase never claimed he knew exactly what he saw, just that it didn't look like another hiker or snowshoer. And the BFRO noted that the silhouette didn't have clear clothing lines or, a pack that you'd expect to see on someone up there in the deep snow. But what really makes these images impressive is that whatever this figure is, it's big, really big. Check this out. Another thing they did was scale tests. So they tried comparing the figure in the photo to what a normal human would look like in the same spot, taking into account the slope and distance, and look how much larger the figure in the original photos is compared to what an average-sized hiker looks like. Even the folks from the show Finding Bigfoot came back with Chase a few times to the same ridge, checking the angles and taking measurements. It'd be easy to assume a video like this is AI, but this footage was captured in 2009. I couldn't find a whole lot of information on this footage, but apparently it was captured in Smuggler's Notch, a mountain pass in Vermont. It's gotta be one of the strangest looking cryptid videos I've ever seen. It almost looks like it has the hind legs of a horse and like the torso and head of a wolf. Is this some really well done VFX, someone in a very convincing suit, or genuine footage of some unknown creature? Let us know what you think down below. This footage comes from cryptozoologist Paul Freeman, who's still considered one of the most respected names in the Bigfoot community. He shot this video in the Blue Mountains of Northeast Oregon in 1994, and it's often called one of the best Bigfoot videos ever captured. Freeman wasn't just known for video though. He also made plaster casts of tracks he claimed were from Bigfoot. Those casts got a lot of attention because they showed dermal ridges, which is something you'd see on a real foot. Anthropologist Jeff Meldrum from Idaho State University studied them and considered them some of the most credible evidence out there. As for this video, is it real or a hoax? People still debate it. Could go either way. But unlike so many distant or blurry sightings, we do get a glimpse of a face here. It's not perfect, but you can kind of get a sense of what the creature might look like, which is why it's so frequently cited in discussions about Bigfoot evidence. I'm sure most of you have seen this image before. It's probably the most famous photo of a supposed sea monster aside from Nessie. The picture was taken at Lake Champlain, a freshwater lake between New York and Vermont, known for a legendary creature called Champ, sometimes called Champy. The first recorded sightings go way back. People have been reporting strange things in the water for hundreds and hundreds of years, but the piece of evidence most people talk about is a photograph taken on July 5th, 1977, by a woman named Sandra Mancy. On a summer day, Sandra and her family were near the northern Vermont shore, when her kids were wading in the shallow bay. About 150 feet out, she suddenly saw something rise up from the water. It had a long neck, a head, and a hump, all visible for several minutes before disappearing again. Sandra grabbed her Kodak camera and managed to snap a single shot before the thing disappeared back under the water. That image, now one of the most famous lake monster photos ever published, appears to show part of a creature with a dark head, a curved neck, and a back breaking the surface of the lake. Over the years, hundreds of people have claimed to see something unusual in Lake Champlain. Ripples, humps, and shapes moving just under the surface. But this photo is still seen as one of the best pieces of visual evidence that keeps believers coming back to the lake each summer. In Lytham, England, late at night on July 18th, 2025, something really strange showed up on a dash cam. It was a nude guy wearing nothing but a black mask and sneakers, just walking through the quiet streets. The footage ended up on a local WhatsApp group and then Facebook, and people couldn't stop talking about it. One local said, "It's a GIMP mask. I've watched the footage. I have no idea what he thinks he's doing." Another added, "In the days after we saw a young man fully clothed walking around the streets, looking up and around, seemingly checking for cameras, we think it's the same man." Lancashire police confirmed that they were reviewing the footage and checking the area, saying, "We are aware of a concerning video circulating on social media of a naked male wearing a face covering walking around Lytham in the early hours of the morning. This incident was not initially reported to police and has only been brought to our attention after it has been viewed on Facebook." What you're looking at here is security footage from Creekside Church of Christ in Midlothian, Texas, and the person in it has never been identified. On April 18th, 2016, 45-year-old fitness instructor Missy Bevers was found dead inside this church. She'd arrived early around 4 a.m. to set up for one of her classes, and by 5 a.m. a student discovered her body. She'd been attacked with multiple puncture wounds to the head and chest, and a hammer was found nearby. The surveillance video taken just before the attack shows someone dressed head to toe in SWAT-style tactical gear calmly walking through the building. They open doors, they smash windows, and they move with a noticeable limp or kind of awkward gait, like they might be dragging a leg. Police haven't confirmed if the intruder was male or female. Missy's iPad or personal belongings were all untouched though, so this person wasn't there for valuables. There was one suspicious vehicle, a 2010 to maybe 2012 Nissan Altima, seen circling the parking lot at 2 a.m. with headlights flashing, but that driver was never identified. Missy had also gotten some strange messages on LinkedIn from a man before her death. To this day, despite all the footage, the hammer, the tactical gear, and the eerie limp, no one knows who this person was. No one knows who killed Missy Bevers or why. Now, we've talked about this one recently, but it does fit too perfectly into this list to skip. In June 2009, a man using the name Peter Bergman checked into a small hotel in Sligo, Ireland. From the very start, his behavior was strange. Almost all of it was caught on CCTV around the city. Over several days, cameras followed him walking calmly through town, always wearing the same black outfit, carrying a purple plastic bag. He stopped at random locations, pulled items out of the bag, and carefully tossed them into public trash bins. When the man was later found, he had no ID, no labeled clothes, and no traceable documents of any kind. The name Peter Bergman was fake, and they couldn't ask him his real name, because all they had was a body. The man was dead. On June 16th, CCTV shows him leaving the hotel for the last time and walking toward a beach. His body was found days later. He drowned, and no one's ever came forward to identify him or explain who he is or why he did what he did. Lars Matank was a 28-year-old man from Germany. In 2014, he was on vacation in Bulgaria with some friends. After getting into a fight with some other tourists, Lars injured his ear, and a doctor told him that he couldn't fly. His friends went home, leaving him behind alone. And that's when things started to get strange. He texted his mom saying he felt scared and that he thought someone was following him. He asked her to cancel his credit card. A few days later, he went to Varna Airport, planning to fly back home. But during a routine check with the airport doctor, something spooked him. A construction worker reportedly walked into the room, and that's when Lars panicked. The cameras captured him running out of the office. He left his luggage behind, and he sprinted through the terminal, out the doors, and into the nearby woods. As he ran, he reportedly shouted, "I don't want to die here. I have to get out of here." And that was the last anyone ever saw of him. Since then, people have speculated endlessly about what happened. Everything from a sudden psychotic break to a possible kidnapping, but no trace of Lars has ever been found.
Can you make it go off again then, please, Fred, if you're happy that we're here? Yay!
Fred, if you're there, please could you open the door?
Two highly experienced pilots at 43,000 feet reported 3 extremely fast, highly reflective aircraft that outran their private jet in seconds. On December 1st, 2025, pilots over Jamestown, New York reported a close encounter with 3 unidentified crafts to air traffic control. The objects were captured on the jet's cockpit sensors and described by the National UFO Reporting Center as having incredible performance. The footage shows 3 distinct metallic glints that moved with a speed that the pilots, highly trained observers, admitted that they had never seen in terrestrial aviation.
It's a strange small object that we just flew by, a small silver canister. Do you know what that could be? I saw nothing attached to it. It was sort of hovering there. It was astonishing. I don't know what it was.
What do you do when the very air around you begins to groan like a massive invisible machine and you catch the sound and the vibrating horizon on your phone? Throughout late 2024 and early 2025, residents in Chillsburg, Kentucky and surrounding areas captured multiple videos of a phenomenon known as sky trumpets or the hum. Unlike older low-quality recordings, these new clips feature high-fidelity audio of deep metallic grinding noises coming from a clear sky. In several videos, the vibration is so intense that you can see the surface of standing water ripple. While skeptics suggest industrial noise or tectonic plates shifting, the sheer scale of the sound heard simultaneously across 50 miles has no verified source. This isn't a shaky amateur clip, it's thermal video from the Department of Homeland Security aircraft showing an object that flies into the ocean at 100 miles per hour without slowing down. In 2013, a DHS surveillance plane over Puerto Rico tracked a small spherical object. The footage analyzed by the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies shows the object traveling over the airport, plunging into the ocean, and most incredibly, splitting into 2 distinct objects while underwater. Despite attempts by the Pentagon to label them as lanterns, forensic experts point out that the lanterns don't travel at 100 miles per hour against the wind or submerge and divide. NASA's own cameras captured a pitch-black, jagged object orbiting Earth, and despite official claims, the geometry looks nothing like a space blanket. During a 1998 space shuttle mission, the crew took high-resolution photos of a strange dark object in a polar orbit. While NASA officially identified it as a lost thermal blanket, the photos show a rigid geometric shape that looks remarkably like a craft. The Black Knight has been the subject of debate for decades, and the NASA Digital Archive's images remain a primary piece of evidence for something artificial in our orbit. When the world's third known interstellar object passed the Sun, NASA's SOHO and HiRISE cameras captured a complex trail structure that looked less like ice and more like a mechanical deployment. In October 2025, the interstellar object known as 3I Atlas sped through our solar system. While officially labeled as a comet, high-resolution imagery from the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter showed the object shifting its structure as it rounded the Sun. Citizen scientists and researchers noted that the coma or dust cloud around the object behaved as if it was being controlled, sparking a global debate about whether Atlas was a rock or an interstellar probe caught on the world's most advanced space cameras. From the Dorito craft over Area 51 to the mechanical mysteries of an interstellar comet, the last 12 months have provided more visual evidence for the unexplained than the previous decade combined. These images aren't just anomalies, they are the new frontier of what we don't yet understand.
So this next guy spotted something perched on top of a dead tree in his backyard. He thought it was a cat at first, but when he looked harder at it, he realized it wasn't like any cat he'd ever seen before. So he pulled out his phone to get a closer look, and this is what he captured. Now, he says in the video it's a monkey, which is possible. I mean, I don't know, I'm not a monkey expert. There aren't many monkeys roaming around here in Canada, but this thing doesn't really look like a monkey to me. Looks kind of like a cat-goat hybrid, gargoyle type creature. One person in the comments said, bro, it's a cat skull emoji. Apparently, you just can't be Gen Z without peppering in a bro and or skull emoji. Alternatively, you can add a crying laughing emoji as well. In the summer of 2000, Jim Mills, a youth leader with a passion for the great outdoors, Outdoors organized a trip to Marble Mountain for a group of young campers. But as they hiked deeper into the wilderness, surrounded by the trees and the sounds of nature, none of them could have predicted what they were about to see. During one of their hikes, as the group ascended a ridge, they noticed something in the distance. It was this large, dark figure stood on a ridge in the distance, seemingly watching them. The figure's size and posture immediately caught the attention of Mills, who quickly grabbed his video camera and started to film. The footage shows this tall creature walking upright along the ridge. There was an ease about its strides, as if it were perfectly familiar with the rough terrain, and judging by the footage and how far away the camera was, the creature looks to stand around 7 or 8 feet tall. Throughout the video, you hear Mills remarking on how long the thing's arms are, and whatever it was, it seemed agitated. Can't hear it very well on camera, but the group said it appeared to be yelling at them while aggressively waving its arms at times, as if to scare them away. Now, I want you to imagine, if you will, that you're out in the woods on a hike, alone. You spot what looks like something poking out behind a tree. It's dark, you can't really make it out. Is it part of the tree, you ask yourself? You're afraid to get any closer, unsure if it's a wild animal, but the longer you look, the clearer it becomes it's not an animal. It's some sort of humanoid shape, but shadowy and perfectly silent, and it's staring at you. No more walks in the forest for me. This next video popped up on Reddit a few years ago. It was filmed in Louisiana. A few guys are recording some deer grazing in a field, but then out of the tree line comes this thing. At first glance, it almost looks like it's galloping, but it's definitely not a horse. Doesn't move like a human either, though. First of all, it's super fast, large, and its front limbs are insanely long. Whether this is something explainable or not, it is definitely a weird clip. This footage comes from Todd Standing, a guy who's pretty well known in the Bigfoot community for some of the more famous alleged sightings out there. According to him, this video shows his first close-up encounter with one of the creatures. After it walked away, Todd and some of his team went up the cliff to check out just how big it might have been, and from what they could tell, it looked like the thing could have been well over 8 feet tall. The footage got enough attention that it even showed up in an episode of Finding Bigfoot. On the show, they tried to recreate the scene by having one of the bigger guys on the team stand on that same ledge to see how he compared. The creature in Todd's video was noticeably taller and bulkier than the guy they used for comparison. And most of us have seen this footage, and for good reason. Unlike so many supposed Bigfoot videos, we get a good long look at this creature, much like the Patterson-Gimlin footage, and on top of that, this version of the creature looks a lot like the one in that infamous film from 1967. The footage was captured on Independence Day in 2013. What also stood out to people about this video is that the creature appears to be carrying an infant. Can't say I've ever seen that before. Doesn't mean it's not a hoax, but it does mean they put in some extra effort if it is. Some people think it's just a good quality suit. Some think it looks super legit. Commenting on the creature's gait and how convincing the fur is. June 5th, 1989, Beijing. Pro-democracy protests have just been crushed in Tiananmen Square. The streets are tense, and the Chinese military is moving tanks through the city. And then, out of nowhere, a single man walks into the road. He's wearing a white shirt, dark pants, and he's carrying what looks like shopping bags. But he isn't just crossing the street, he stands directly in front of the tanks, stopping them in their tracks. The lead tank tries to go around him, but he moves with it, blocking it. At one point, he even climbs onto the tank, gesturing at the soldiers inside. Nobody knows what he said, or even if he said anything at all. It's all captured on camera, and the footage went around the world almost instantly. But for how famous the image of this man standing in front of these tanks quickly became, we still don't know who he was. Tank Man's identity has never been confirmed, and his fate after that day is a mystery. Some say he was arrested immediately, others think he got away. In March 2025, something weird showed up on a Ring doorbell camera in North York Borough, Pennsylvania. A person wearing a homemade mask. It looked like a paper plate with a creepy face and colorful petals taped around it. The person walked up to someone's front door in the early morning hours. He set down a cardboard box, then leaned in close to the camera and said, "I am the box demon. This box is a gift for you." The box turned out to be empty. Police shared the footage and encouraged anyone with info to help figure out who the masked visitor was. Then just about a day later, authorities announced they'd identified and spoken to the person behind the box demon, but they didn't release their name or explain their motives to the public. So as for who this person is, we don't know. This image was captured at Chester Castle in England. Nobody knows who or what this figure is. A security guard at Chester Castle got a call from the control room saying that cameras had spotted unusual movement. Normally fearless, his dog, which the security guard described as, quote, the size of a small bear, refused to leave the car, whimpering nervously. When the guard went to investigate, he said he felt 100 eyes on him and felt genuinely terrified. But when he looked around, there was no one, and no signs of anyone entering or leaving the castle grounds. Cameras, however, told a different story. They recorded this strange, faceless figure walking across the area in front of the main gates. It was clearly visible on the footage, moving in a way that no one could explain, and yet no one was physically there when the guard arrived. Staff across English heritage sites have been reporting unusual things for years, from a disembodied hand at Belsley Hall to eerie piano music in the walls of Bolsover Castle, and ghostly figures disappearing into the woods around Rest Park. Louise Fountain, a property manager at Bolsover, said they even keep a ghost book so that staff and visitors can record sightings, sometimes even drawing what they saw. She described cases where visitors felt a child's hand holding theirs, or heard sounds of a bouncing ball long after anyone had left. On November 22nd, 1963, crowds were lining the streets of Dallas, Texas, watching the president's car roll by. Cameras were clicking everywhere, people were filming. In the middle of it all, one woman appeared in photos and footage later nicknamed the Babushka Lady. She wore a headscarf and was standing in a spot where she would have seen everything that happened. And she seemed to be holding a camera herself. That means she might have captured one of the clearest angles of the whole thing. The problem, nobody knows who she was. So any photos she took have never been found. The FBI even put out calls for her to come forward, but she never did. Some people think she was just an ordinary bystander, and others wonder if she had a reason for keeping quiet. I mean, it's possible that if anyone wanted certain details hidden, they wouldn't have wanted her images getting out. Whatever the truth, the Babushka Lady remains one of the most mysterious unanswered pieces of that day. This footage doesn't look all that strange. Security footage outside someone's home capturing a woman trudging through the grass. If you didn't know any better, you'd think she lived there, but she doesn't. And the homeowner has no idea who she is or how she got there. The clip comes from Reddit user ConorBon3R, who writes, "Last night, our security cameras captured a random stranger wandering through our yard. We live up in the mountains, miles away from the nearest town, surrounded by forested mountains with no neighbors nearby. It was pitch black, and the person wasn't dressed for bushwhacking, especially not in the dark. It's seriously the middle of nowhere, and we never see anyone around here." Two parents thought they might have spotted their missing daughter, Lori, 4 years after she disappeared. In 1980, while staying in California, they were watching a documentary and noticed an extra in the film who looked just like her. They tried reaching out to the filmmakers, but they couldn't track her down. The next year, the filmmaker released another documentary called Whatever Happened to Lori Jean Lloyd to raise awareness about the case, but it didn't turn up any new leads. Lori was a teenager in Kettering, Ohio, when she vanished on February 11th, 1976. That evening, she'd been babysitting her nephew with a friend. Her mother dropped off a pizza, Lori thanked her, and everything seemed fine. Later that night, Anita returned and realized that Lori was gone. The friend and nephew were asleep, and when the friend woke up, she said Lori had left to walk 3 blocks to a convenience store to buy cigarettes. The employees at the shop never saw her that night, though. Her mother searched the area, but she couldn't find her. Police didn't immediately take the case seriously because Lori had a history of running away, but her family knew that this was different. She always called to check in, and she usually stayed with friends. This time she hadn't. Some friends said Lori had mentioned wanting to move to California with her father and had planned to meet a boy that night who might help her get there. If he existed, no one ever identified him. Lori left behind all her personal belongings, including a small bank account, untouched. For years, her disappearance remained a total mystery. But in 2016, she was tentatively identified as a Jane Doe, found in Grant County, Kentucky, based on dental records. While law enforcement hasn't officially confirmed it, Her family did accept that the remains were hers. Reddit user Navy_Beans shared this next clip, writing, "Had an unexpected visitor on the property. All the properties up here are 3+ acres on a mountain, kilometers away from the city. So out of the darkness, we see the undeniable silhouette of a man making his way down the gravel road outside Navy Bean's home. Turns out he's nude. So that's great. He walks up to the property, skulks around a bit. He goes for the door at one point, which was thankfully locked, then makes his way back into the shadows where he belongs, hopefully to a place with pants and a shirt." Charby11 shared this next creepy encounter on TikTok. It was 4 a.m. when this strange woman slowly made her way to the door and rang the doorbell. Instead of standing and waiting to see if anyone could answer though, she just turns and slowly walks away, further and further until she's totally out of view. Actually, kind of looks like she vanishes. Strange indeed, and what makes it worse is how cold it obviously is. She's wrapped in blankets, you can see her breath. It's a chilly night, so what was this lady doing walking around ringing random people's doorbells? She wasn't even asking for help or anything. Can't say I've ever seen anything quite like this next one. It happened in Colombia. A man walks into this house, you can hear voices inside. Sounds like maybe a party's going on. The door stays open for a while. Seems like the guy's standing in the doorway maybe, greeting people. As the door finally starts to close though, something flies toward it. I mean, your brain can't even comprehend what the hell you just watched. And what was that? It looks like an orb flew at the door. Kind of looks like a baseball at first, but it doesn't move in a straight line. It kind of like whips around. Apparently the guy needed like 24 stitches. This happened in Carlton, just north of Dallas, Texas, on a Saturday evening around 8 p.m. A couple had gone out for dinner and stopped to buy a Powerball ticket. While they were out, someone showed up at their door. A dude wearing a devil mask appeared on the porch. He rang the doorbell while holding up a cardboard sign that read Revelation chapter 20, verses 1 through 15. After waiting a few seconds with no response, he knocked on the door, then walked around to the back driveway and held the sign up there as well. The Bible passage referenced on the sign describes the apocalypse, saying believers go to heaven while non-believers are thrown into a lake of fire. The homeowners later said the incident left them shaken. The woman told the news, I'm scared to leave the house. I'm scared about the end times. It's about Judgment Day. I freaked out. I couldn't even think of anything." Police in town said this appears to be an isolated incident though. The person didn't technically commit a crime, and they didn't really bother investigating into it any further. And I gotta be honest, I don't think this would really freak me out all that much either. I mean, it seems like the guy is just playing a prank. But I mean, if you're someone who believes in the devil, like wholeheartedly, I get why this might be unsettling. His final case is without a doubt the most disturbing. It happened in Dudley, England in 2023. Sharon Gordon hired a local builder named Peter Norgrove to build an extension onto her home. She met him through their church, a Jehovah's Witness congregation in town. He came across as friendly, reliable, he was deeply involved in the community, and according to her family, that shared faith played a big role in why she trusted him. Now, the job was supposed to take about 6 weeks. Instead, dragged on for 15 months. Sharon paid him a bunch of money up front, but the work barely progressed. On top of that, Norgrove kept lying about when he was actually showing up to work, so Sharon decided to start documenting everything. She kept notebooks, receipts, and installed the video doorbell because she believed he was lying about being at her house and wanted proof. On July 20th, Sharon confronted him about the delays and lies, and that argument escalated. Norgrove became furious, and he hit her 8 times in the head with a hammer. Afterward, Norgrove went home, showered, shaved, and then led a church service that same evening. And this really stuck out to the judge later, who said it was a pretty clear sign that he had zero remorse for what he did. Sharon's body was discovered the next day by friends who went to check on her. Police later watched her doorbell camera footage showing Norgrove coming out of the house with red stains on his clothes. Sharon's daughter described him as a wolf in sheep's clothing, saying he used faith as a cover to hide who he really was. Norgrove was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 15 years before parole can even be considered.
Hospitals are often places where life and death converge, and many have tales of resident ghosts. In 2015, a hospital in Ireland captured a truly disturbing event on its internal CCTV. A seemingly empty ward, dark and quiet, is suddenly disturbed by what appears to be a sheet or gurney being violently thrown across the floor. Then a shadowy humanoid figure quickly moves past a doorway in the background. Hospital staff were unable to explain the moving objects or the figure, leading many to believe it was a paranormal occurrence. In August 2021, a trail camera in the backwoods of Wadesboro, North Carolina, captured something deeply disturbing. Deep in the middle of the night, a woman was photographed walking past a deer baiting station. She appeared disoriented and was holding a walking stick and seemed to be wearing only a shirt and undergarments. What makes this case truly chilling is that the camera was located miles from the nearest road or house. Tragically, skeletal remains were discovered in that same area a few months later. Despite the photos and DNA testing, authorities have been unable to identify her. Known as the Anson County Jane Doe, her presence in such a remote area at that hour and her eventual fate remains one of the most haunting unidentified person mysteries caught on camera. Graveyards are inherently creepy places after dark, and in 2016, a ghost hunter in an old cemetery in England captured something that sent shivers down his spine. Using a full spectrum camera, he recorded what appeared to be a small translucent figure of a young girl playing amongst the tombstones. She briefly looks towards the camera before fading away. The area is known for its history, including several child burials from centuries ago. Was this a lost spirit forever bound to her resting place? In 2020, a homeowner in San Angelo, Texas, was alerted by her security system to a presence on her front porch. The footage captured a man who appeared to be well over 6 feet tall, dressed in a heavy coat despite the mild weather, wearing a wide brim hat that shadowed his face. For several minutes, he didn't knock, didn't try the handle, and didn't even move. He simply stood there, inches from the door, staring. When the homeowner spoke through the two-way audio asking, "Can I help you?" the man didn't respond. He slowly turned his head, looked at the camera one last time, and drifted off the porch into the darkness. Local police released the footage to the public asking for help in identifying the suspicious solicitor, but no one in the community knew who he was, and he was never seen again. In October 2014, the long shadows of Jacksonville, Florida played host to a visitor that seemed to crawl straight out of a nightmare. Amidst a viral creepy clown phenomenon sweeping the nation, a silent figure in full circus regalia was captured on a Springfield home surveillance feed in the dead of night. The footage is chillingly deliberate. The clown steps onto the porch, stares with unblinking intensity directly into the camera lens, and then with a sudden violent grace begins to tear apart a pumpkin with his bare hands. Without uttering a single word, the jester retreated back into the darkness, leaving only the mangled remains of the fruit behind. While some dismissed the encounter as an elaborate neighborhood prank, the identity of the person behind the mask was never officially confirmed, leaving many to wonder what truly drives a stranger to haunt the doorsteps of the sleeping. Imagine losing your purse and checking your security footage to find out where you left it, only to realize that while you were napping on the couch, a stranger was just standing over you, watching. In 2016, Jack and his girlfriend Jordan were dozing off on their couch in the Bucktown neighborhood of Chicago. It was a normal, quiet night until Jordan realized her purse was missing the next morning. When Jack pulled up their Nest camera footage to see if she'd misplaced it, they were horrified. The camera, which was positioned at the top of the stairs, showed a man in a hoodie who had entered through an unlocked balcony door. For over 15 minutes, the man stood at the top of the stairs perfectly still, staring down at the sleeping couple. He didn't move toward the TV or the valuables immediately, he just watched them. At one point, he even seems to look directly at the camera with a calm, unsettling confidence. He eventually took the purse and left, but the couple said that the theft was nothing compared to the skin-crawling feeling of knowing a stranger had spent a quarter of an hour observing their most vulnerable state. A resident in eastern Nebraska was alerted by his noise detection system in the middle of the night. When he reviewed the footage from his indoor camera, he saw a tall, dark humanoid figure standing
in his hallway. The figure was thin and appeared to be wearing skin-tight black clothing, but as it reached out to touch a door frame, the camera captured something impossible. An abnormally long, spindly finger that seemed to have an extra joint. The footage, which was posted to local forums and later Reddit, caused a stir because of the high quality of the recording. Skeptics argued that it was a person in a costume, but the homeowner noted that his dogs, usually aggressive towards strangers, were cowering in a corner refusing to bark. The family has since moved into a hotel, unable to explain who or what was exploring their home while they slept. Explorers in a deserted Colorado hospital in late 2025 weren't looking for spirits, but a shadow figure twice the height of a man was looking for them. In December 2025, a group of urban explorers was filming a documentary inside a long-shuttered infirmary known for its violent history. As they panned their 4K camera down a darkened corridor, they captured a massive towering shadow figure that seemed to absorb the light from their flashlights. The figure was estimated to be at least 8 feet tall, standing perfectly still at the end of the hallway. Unlike a typical shadow, this figure had a 3D presence, appearing to move slightly as the camera moved. When the team approached the spot, the figure didn't run, it simply dissolved into the wall. The footage has been analyzed by experts who ruled out a person in the suit due to the height and the lack of any heat signature on their secondary thermal device. A Brazilian family thought that they were dealing with a rodent problem until their security camera showed a hand reaching out from underneath their sofa, one that didn't belong to anyone in the house. In mid-2025, a family in Brazil installed a small camera in their living room to see what was knocking over their houseplants at night. In one segment of the footage, a small pale hand with elongated fingers slowly slides out from underneath the couch, and it feels around the floor, grabs a television remote, and slowly pulls it back into the darkness under the furniture. The family allegedly flipped the couch over, but found nothing underneath. No holes in the floor, no person hiding, and no space large enough even for a human to fit there. The phantom hand incident became a national sensation in Brazil, with many believing the family was living with a duende or a domestic spirit. A truck driver's dash cam captured a small child wandering alone on a high-speed highway in the dead of night, but when he stopped to help, the child was gone. In 2021, Mitch Cahoon was driving on the Hume Highway when his dash cam recorded a small figure in blue clothes standing on the shoulder. He immediately turned around to rescue what he thought was a lost toddler, but the road was empty. The police searched the area with thermal cameras and found no sign of a child, leaving the dash cam footage as the only proof that something was there.
So this one's infuriating. Just earlier this month in Evansville, Indiana, a man and his wife ordered food through DoorDash. Nothing seemed off until after they ate, both of them started vomiting and felt intense burning in their mouths, throats, noses, and stomachs. Thankfully, they had a doorbell camera, so they checked it. The footage showed their miserable-looking DoorDash driver placing the food on the porch. Before walking away, she pulled out a small aerosol can attached to her keychain, sprayed something directly onto the food. That driver was later identified as 29-year-old Courtney Stevenson. When investigators questioned her, Stevenson said she used pepper spray, but claimed she was trying to kill a spider. And yeah, they didn't fall for that, especially because it was 35 degrees Fahrenheit that night. At that temperature, spiders in Indiana aren't known to be very active. The man who ordered the food, Mark Carden, later said, "It's horrific to think about all the other ways our food could have been messed with. It could have had rat poison, it could have been fentanyl, my wife could have been dead." Stevenson was arrested and charged with felony battery and consumer product tampering. This happened on December 12th in Hayward, California. Crews were working on a street in a quiet neighborhood when they hit a gas line. Gas ignited, and suddenly there was a huge explosion that shook the entire block. People nearby didn't know what was happening at first. All of a sudden, their houses were shaking and things were falling off the walls. The homeowner with this doorbell camera, Brittany Malandano, said the explosion hit without warning. "We were sitting in the house and everything shook," she said. "Objects fell off the walls. When they checked the doorbell footage, she said it felt like watching a war video." 6 people were injured in the blast. 3 were listed in serious condition. Investigators later confirmed the cause was a gas line explosion. The explosion damaged 2 homes and a nearby workshop, and more than 75 firefighters rushed to the scene to battle the flames. This next piece of creepy doorbell camera footage comes from Booby Doom on TikTok, who'd been out with her husband at dinner, and they got a notification from their camera. camera. A woman was standing on their lawn, staring at the house. This would be weird any night, but look at the constant lightning in the sky. Not a great night to be roaming around creeping on people's homes, so they called the babysitter and told her to go to the master bedroom and lock herself in the bathroom. But that, nothing was wrong. It was just a precaution. Yeah, that's comforting. Hey, no need to worry or anything, but dear God, lock yourself away. No reason. The woman rushes to the door, and she's holding something wrapped up in blankets. Luckily, it's just a doll, but that means she was using it to try and persuade people into letting her into their homes for who knows what reason. This incident happened on March 27th in Deptford, southeast London. A woman in her 40s was returning home shortly after 7 p.m. She walked down a flight of steps to her front door, carrying a backpack and a handbag. She fumbled through her bag for her keys when a hooded man dressed in black with his face covered appeared behind her. The man grabbed her while wielding a blade. Police were notified about 10 minutes after the incident. A spokesperson for the Metropolitan Police said, at around 7:15 p.m. on Thursday, 27th of March, police received reports of an incident outside an address in Deptford. A woman in her 40s was approached and threatened with a blade outside her home. Officers attended the scene and spoke with the victim, who wasn't injured. So, could have been much worse, but as of the latest update, no arrests have been made. This one comes from Wisconsin just back in November. It was just after 1 a.m. when a Ring camera picked up a group of 6 hooded teenagers who walked up to a parked car in a quiet residential street. They stood around for a bit, and once the street was clear, they threw a large stone, smashing the car's window. Seconds later, the same person lit an object on fire and tossed it straight into the passenger seat. Of course, flames started spreading. The group suddenly panicked. One ran off immediately while the others awkwardly threw random objects at the car. Moments later, it just erupts into a massive fireball. The alarm starts blaring, lighting up the entire street. A neighbor runs into frame and frantically presses the doorbell, trying to wake the homeowner as the fire grows out of control. The person who posted the footage later wrote, "Thank God it wasn't my car. My Benz was parked right in front of it, and my Hummer across the street." As of now, it's unclear whether the attack was targeted or random, or if any arrests were made.
Our first chilling encounter takes us to Fresno, California. Imagine waking up to a noise, checking your security camera, and seeing this. A tall, slender figure, almost translucent, glides across the driveway. It doesn't walk, it seems to float. Its form vaguely human, but undeniably unsettling. The homeowner, who wishes to remain anonymous, stated that they had never seen anything like it. Police investigated but found no evidence of an intruder, leaving this spectral visitor a complete mystery. Was it a prank, a glitch, or something far more otherworldly? Next, we head to a reportedly haunted hotel in Ohio. A security camera captured a dimly lit corridor in the dead of night. Suddenly, a small, pale figure resembling a young girl in an old-fashioned dress appears at one end of the hall. She stands motionless for a few seconds, then slowly drifts down the corridor before vanishing into thin air. Hotel staff, accustomed to strange occurrences, were still unnerved by the clarity of this apparition. Guests reported cold spots and disembodied whispers in the same area. Is this the lingering spirit of a past resident, forever walking the halls? A family in rural Pennsylvania installed security cameras after a series of minor disturbances. One night, their motion-activated camera captured something truly disturbing. A figure, appearing to be a person, walks through their backyard. However, its head is strangely obscured or simply featureless, a dark void where a face should be. It moves with an almost unnatural gait, slowly, deliberately, before disappearing behind a shed. No footprints were found and nothing was reported stolen, leaving the family terrified and confused. Who or what was this faceless visitor? Urban explorers often capture strange things, but in 2019, a group investigating an abandoned asylum in New York caught something truly chilling. Their night vision camera picked up a thermal signature in a dark hallway. As they approached, a distinct human-like form, appearing to be standing still, was visible. When one of the explorers called out, the figure seemed to recoil and then rapidly move away, disappearing around the corner. They never caught up to it and couldn't identify anyone else in the building. Was it another explorer, a squatter, or something else entirely haunting these desolate halls? Imagine checking your security app at 3 a.m. only to see a thin, pale creature with flapping ears doing a strange dance right next to your car. In June 2019, Vivian Gomez of Colorado shared a chilling 10-second clip from her driveway security camera. The footage shows a small, pale humanoid figure with extremely thin limbs and large protruding ears walking with an odd, jerky gait. The video went viral globally, with many comparing the figure to Dobby from Harry Potter. While skeptics suggested that it was a child in a mask or a puppet, Gomez maintains that she has no idea who or what it was, and no neighbor or family member has ever come forward to claim responsibility. It remains one of the most famous unidentified people ever caught on home camera.
Some people say this is one of the spookiest forest videos they've ever seen. Sergey is a Russian hunter who is out in the East Siberian taiga, one of the most vast, inhospitable forests in the world. He'd grown up hearing eerie stories about it and had been warned not to venture into the forest himself, especially not alone. But being an experienced hunter and explorer, he was pretty sure of himself and set out for a hunt, deciding to bring a camera along to document everything for his YouTube channel. Well, once he set up camp for the night, he noticed this strange metallic whistling sound echoing through the trees. This goes on for a while, and then we hear what sounds like a man yelling. Listen really closely here. Did you hear that, like, Gah! Doesn't sound like any animal I've ever heard of. But again, this is a very remote forest, and Sergey had hiked pretty deep at this point, so the chances of someone else being out in his general vicinity were slim. It's still possible. Even so, why were they screaming? Rather freaked out at this point, Sergey moves a little closer to the sound to get a better listen. At this point, he decides it's probably best to leave, so he heads back to camp to grab his stuff. The story is nowhere near over, but for the sake of time, I'm gonna have to split it up, and it's taken up 2 spots on the list. So as Sergey makes his way back out the forest, his worst fear becomes a reality. Whatever that thing out there in the trees is, it's following him. He starts hearing all these eerie whooping sounds, and they're getting closer, but then he hears this, and I gotta say, my pants would have fallen off from all the bricks I'd be filling them up with at this point. Take a listen to this.
Oh.
Not only does a twig snap close by, but it sounds like someone is laughing not too far away. Notice how heavy Sergey's breathing is now too. You can tell adrenaline is just pumping through his body. He's in full flight or fight mode at this point. So he decides to climb a tree to get away from whoever or whatever is down below, and the eerie noises just continue. It sounds like there's an old lady laughing or crying down there, utterly terrifying. So Sergey then fires into the air to try and scare the thing off. He sits up in that tree for a while, periodically firing into the air as the odd sounds continue. Eventually, though, the sun comes up and he heads home after one of the most terrifying nights of his life. What was out there stalking him? Was it a person, a bunch of people, some sort of animal that could mimic human speech? Who the hell knows? All I know is that this is one of the creepiest paranormal themed forest videos I've ever seen. Back in 2012, this grainy video popped up online. It shows what looks like a woolly mammoth walking through a river in Siberia. At the time, the news reported that the footage was captured by a Russian government engineer in a desolate area of Siberia. It really looks like a mammoth, with shaggy brown hair and what looks like a long trunk. Plus, if I had to pick one place on the planet where mammoths might still be roaming around, it would be rural Siberia. The area is just so vast and mostly unexplored, but it's also Very possible this is a bear with a fish in its mouth, giving the illusion of a trunk, but what do you all think? Share your thoughts down below. A couple years ago, a video was captured of something in the sky over Krasnoyarsk, a city in Siberia with over 1 million people. Around 8 p.m., a giant fireball shot across the sky. People caught it on dash cams and CCTV, and the videos went viral. You could see this insanely bright streak flying fast and then exploding high above the ground. A fireball is basically a meteor, but way brighter than usual. Most meteors are tiny, like pebbles that burn up in the atmosphere and barely make a streak of light. Fireballs are bigger chunks of space rock. The ones that explode mid-air are called bolides. That's what everyone saw in Krasnoyarsk. Meteors hit the atmosphere crazy fast, anywhere from 25,000 to 160,000 miles per hour. Most of them just burn up and disappear, but if they're big enough, they can survive the trip through the air and hit the ground as meteorites. Russia has a history of this happening. In 2013, a huge meteor exploded in the sky. The blast was so bright it outshone the sun, broke windows, and injured hundreds of people. And of course, even crazier was the Tunguska event in 1908. Something exploded over Siberia with hundreds of times the power of the Hiroshima bomb, flattening over 80 million trees. Back in 2016, this weird piece of footage was shared online, showing a giant glowing sphere hovering over a field near Novosibirsk. The video was captured by Roman Tregubov, a grad from Novosibirsk State Technical University. You could see the sphere hovering just above the horizon, then slowly gliding across the field before disappearing into nearby woods. Roman told the press, quote, "It is very rare, yet it can appear anywhere. I was astonished to see a fireball lightning of such size, and not just that, but to catch the whole process from the beginning until the end." A lot of people were pretty confused by this explanation. A lot of commenters pointed out that most ball lightning is tiny, maybe a few meters at most, and usually disappears pretty fast. This orb was several meters wide and stayed intact as it glided across the field. Still, few viewers agreed with Roman, but even they admitted that ball lightning usually dissipates a lot faster than it did here.
A trail camera photographer in late 2024 caught an image so disturbing that he believes it might finally solve a 40-year-old cold case. Photographer Gregory Henderson was reviewing trail cam shots from a remote wooded area when he found an image of a young woman in a vintage-style dress standing among the trees. The figure was slightly translucent and her expression was one of profound sadness. The truly disturbing part? The exact location was near where a woman had gone missing in the late 1980s. Locals had searched the woods for decades but never found a trace. When Henderson showed the photo to the woman's surviving family, they claimed that the dress matched exactly what she was wearing the day that she vanished. While skeptics call it a double exposure, the lack of other people in the area and the historical connection have left many convinced that the camera accidentally captured a soul that hasn't found its way home. In 1992, the owner of the Myrtles plantation was taking routine exterior photos for a fire insurance policy when she accidentally captured the most famous ghost photo in American history. The image reveals a dark, translucent figure standing in a breezeway between the general store and the butler's pantry. Known as Chloe, the figure appears to be a woman in a long dress and a head wrap peering directly toward the camera. The photographer verified that the grounds were empty at the time, and subsequent analysis suggested the figure possessed physical depth and shadowing that ruled out a simple lens flare. The figure is linked to the chilling legend of a house slave who was reportedly lynched after a plan to save the family from a poisoned cake went tragically wrong. In September 2020, Greg Yuta and his family were driving through Gettysburg National Military Park when their dashcam recorded two translucent, human-sized figures darting across the road. Captured near a row of historic cannons, the figure displayed a rhythmic, athletic running gait as they emerge from the darkness and disappear into the woods. Unlike typical camera glitches, these entities appear semi-transparent and move with an urgency that mimics soldiers charging through a battlefield, despite no one being physically present on the road. Given the site's history as the bloodiest battle of the Civil War, many believe this is a residual haunting, a traumatic moment from 1863 caught in a loop and accidentally preserved by modern technology. While skeptics point to a potential reflection on the windshield, the way the figures move independently of the car's motion has made this one of the most famous pieces of footage in Gettysburg lore. In October 2024, a trail camera captured a deer that appeared to be broken. In the image, the deer is standing unnaturally upright on its forelegs with its hind legs suspended in the air. Its neck is twisted at an impossible 180-degree angle, and its eyes are wide and glowing with an eerie intensity. While biologists suggest that the deer might have been caught mid-jump or maybe was suffering from a neurological parasite like zombie deer disease or chronic wasting disease, the stillness of the photo makes it look like a puppet that's being held up by invisible strings. It is one of the most shared and debated wildlife photos of the last year. Our number one spot is a capture from October 2025 that was so violent it forced a business to close its doors for an investigation. The haunted pub of Doncaster has been a local legend for years, but it wasn't until October 2025 that the owners caught the shadow man on their new security system. The footage shows a completely empty bar after closing time. Suddenly, a bar stool is violently hurled across a room by an invisible force. Seconds later, a dark humanoid shadow, opaque and solid, walks across the bar, pauses to look at the camera, and then vanishes. What makes this the most disturbing capture is the interaction with the physical world. The shadow wasn't just a trick of light, it had the mass to move heavy furniture. Investigators who reviewed the footage could find no wires, no hidden people, and no logical explanation for how a shadow could throw a chair. It remains the most compelling piece of accidental footage captured in the last few years.